Ron Van Dam is the toast of the talk show world. Dry, white, unbuttered toast. And you are about to choke down a heapin' helping. This is the Ron Van Dam Show on New England Broadcasting.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. It's the Ron Van Dam Show.
Here I am, I'm right over here.
Hold on tight, things can get a bit weird, if you like that sort of thing.
No, not there. I'm over here. Here I am. I'm coming out of your speaker. Look, I'm coming out of your speaker right. Here I am. All right, welcome to the program. It is the Ron Van Dam Show. I'm the one in the middle. Thank you so much for being here. You relax. I got a very special show for you today because I'm pissed off about something. Really, Ron? Does that ever happen? Yes, constantly. And what is it about today? Well, something that really is like, seriously? All right, calm down. Okay, here's what I don't understand. Taylor Swift put out a double album. Okay. That's nice. Donald Trump is like in a New York courtroom trying to defend his life. Okay. That's nice. There's a lot of stuff going on. But the real elephant in the room is not an elephant. It's the planet. I know. Ronnie, really going to go there? You're going to talk about saving the planet? I don't understand why we don't do that every day. You don't get it. You don't understand. This is the only planet we have. We fucked it up for like decades and decades, nearly a century. And it's like nobody does anything about it because we're all too comfortable with what we do to the land to make it like nice for us. I don't understand. And we're getting the repercussions of it now in the more severe storms and that kind of thing, and polar ice caps melting. And I mean, the evidence is right in your face. And yet human beings just stand there and go, okay, you can just pee on my head. I don't care anymore. What's wrong with you? Every nation, there are people starving in the middle of the desert in many countries because there's no food. There's no food for everybody. We're knocking down forests to build big houses. We're knocking off species of the animal world that we depend on, not for food necessarily at all, but just for the ecosystem. The air that we breathe, the water that we drink. The hell's wrong with you? And even the environmentalists, they're not even excited enough about this to do anything about it, really. You know, we're going to go to electric cars eventually. I don't know how we're going to make them run with the little batteries, but we're going to electric cars and no more gas because we don't want to do the fossil fuel thing anymore and the exhaust fumes from all the more cars on the road than ever before in our living planet history, and by 2060, we should be all electric. Oh, that's nice. Well, you'll also be all dead. Well, not dead, but certainly sick. You're wondering where the cancers come from? Seriously, the preservatives in the food. I mean, it's just a whole ball game. When does somebody slap themselves in the face and start waking up? It's the planet, man. Everything you need to peacefully and happily exist is on and in this planet. It's like here I am. Live off of me comfortably and honor me. But no, we destroy it. We knock it down, we destroy it, we drill into it. Okay, maybe we thought that was a good idea and that could go on forever, but apparently we were really wrong about that. And as I think we're trying to go back to the moon, I don't think that really makes a difference. Start going to other planets and start building some CVS's and some Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, where civilization actually begins. Because you're going to have to move people off this planet eventually, and your plans for that apparently are not going well either. It's just got to stop. It's got to stop now. But we're all individual countries, and we all want the best for ourselves as we tap off of the land and destroy it as we do so in the process. Now, I know, I could have that little Greta girl come over here from the Scandinavian countries and start yelling at the United Nations ambassadors again. But that didn't do much either. That was just a nice little YouTube video. No, it's time. It's time to just stop this crap and to start taking care of the planet. So, my guest today is going to hit this subject full on. And when the show's over, everybody will go back to guzzling their gas and knocking down the trees and, just watching the storms go by, destroying parts of your towns and cities, pour billions of dollars to rebuild them so you'll be knocked down and flooded again. Don't you get it? Stuff has to be done quickly. But human beings never unite for anything. They unite to destroy things, but they don't unite to put things back together and to make things better. Okay, my guest joins us momentarily. But first, I'm sorry to be serious. I'm supposed to be doing a comedy show. So like the thesis of this whole thing is a satirical comedy show about the crazy things in life. But every once in a while, you know what I'm saying? Okay, we'll get to my guest, but first, we are hiring here at the program at the Ron Van Dam Show. Looking for a job? How about this could be you?
Are you looking for a career in the fast-paced world of radio and podcasting? Good news, New England Broadcasting is now hiring. That's right, you could have a chance to work with 30-year broadcasting icon Ron Van Dam on his Daily Show and all the other fine programs on New England Broadcasting. Immerse yourself in the non-stop action of a broadcasting career where every day you'll be responsible for things like warming up Ron's coffee, getting more coffee, cleaning unspeakable schmutz off microphones, semi-regular toenail and ear hair trimming, checking the dryer to see if Ron's underpants are toasty warm, helping Ron into his toasty warm underpants, telling Ron he sounds good, checking to see if Shanahan is sober enough to do some bits, reassuring Ron that you're not lying, he does sound good, unclogging the studio toilet, yes, every day, fending off Ron's fan, intermittent waxing, and taking calls from Ron's exciting guests, from that lady who wrote a book on diseases only frogs get, to the D-list celebrity who's thrilled to be the official spokesperson for the American Nasal Impaction Society. You might be wondering if you're right for the job. Qualifications include an unironic interest in radio, knowing who Ron is in the first place, a tolerance for supernatural levels of flatulence, and at least 1 year of experience in dealing with grumpy old people who talk to themselves. If that sounds like you, your future is waiting at New England Broadcasting.
Dr. John Berger is here, and he's written a book that is very important, actually, called Solving the Climate Crisis, Frontline Reports from the Race to Save the Earth. What could be more important than that? I don't think anything else. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Berger.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk with you this morning.
Now, first of all, you've spent quite a bit of time researching this topic, I understand.
I did. I actually spent, depending upon when the starting gun went off, it could either be 20 years or 40 years or 8 years. But I did travel around Western Europe and all around the United States. I interviewed hundreds of people. And as I intimated, I've been studying this topic and related topics for decades during my career.
And you've interviewed, I understand, governors, mayors, ranchers, scientists, engineers, business leaders, energy experts, entrepreneurs, carbon farmers, solar and wind.
Right.
My
Even
God.
even the Secretary of Energy. Actually, I've interviewed two secretaries of energy.
Over that span
So
of
you've
time,
got
yeah.
it from the horse's mouth here.
Okay. Well, I happen to find this to be the most important issue that we can possibly face, not only for now, but certainly for the future. But apparently, other people don't agree with me. They think that this is what we have now is fine. Let's milk what we got, and that's it. When reports, I'm sure you found that if something isn't done rather soon, there could be a situation where you can't get it to where you want it to be. You're just going to have to settle for less or worse. Is that accurate?
I think that that is a very accurate characterization. And the problem is that we have stuffed the atmosphere full of industrial waste gases, primarily carbon dioxide, which is benevolent and benign in normal quantities, but we've changed the composition of the atmosphere, and therefore the atmosphere serves as a blanket around the Earth.
Yeah.
And when the sun's radiation comes in through the atmosphere, is transformed into infrared radiation when it strikes the ground and
Yeah.
other whatever is in its path.
Yeah.
It tries to re-radiate up from the Earth and out into space, but this blanket of heat-trapping gases that we're constantly adding to reflects the heat back down to Earth, and therefore the Earth keeps gaining heat. We are discharging about 50 billion tons of carbon dioxide and other carbon dioxide equivalent gases to the atmosphere every single year, even though diplomats got together in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and they resolved to keep human interference in the climate system to a level that would not result in a dangerous disruption of the climate.
Yeah.
However, we now have a very dangerous disruption of the climate, and it's getting worse and worse. We see that, excuse me, every year in extreme weather and droughts and floods and heat waves, and it's all exacerbated by climate change.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that from a technological and meteorological sense and geological, that's true. Socially, what people don't understand is when these things start to deteriorate on the planet, socially it becomes impossible to live. Water becomes scarce, food becomes scarce, sea levels rise. And it happens so slowly at first that the alarm doesn't sound. It's just discussion. But indeed, the planet will always be here, but we may not under the circumstances.
And we may be here, but we may be here under
Suffering.
Very adverse conditions.
Right.
Civilization is fragile, and human order is fragile.
Yeah.
And when we put incredible burdens on our social safety net, eventually that social safety net begins to fray.
Correct.
And when that happens, order degenerates into chaos.
Yes.
And in some ways, we've seen that with the millions of refugees that we have around the world. Many of them are fleeing regions that have been badly impacted by drought or by other factors that make their region unlivable, and then they wind up traveling to Europe or drowning in the Mediterranean or arriving at the U.S. border penniless and in very bad straits. So we're seeing these consequences, and we're seeing a set of other consequences too. But if you trace the arrow of consequence back to the origin, you discover that it is primarily the burning of fossil fuels that results in all of these adverse
Yeah.
and very damaging, costly impacts.
Yeah.
We lose about 7.5 to 8 million people a year globally as a result of air pollution, 90% of which is caused by burning fossil fuels. So we do have alternatives, and in my book, Solving the Climate Crisis, I try to outline what those alternatives are.
Yeah, well, from that standpoint alone, I mean, it's the electric cars that are getting the attention, but the technology isn't quite moving fast enough to get us there quickly, unfortunately. The concept is there and the movement is there, but now it might be a race against the clock because, as I understand it, as slow as this deprogression has been, it will accelerate as we get closer to time.
You're absolutely right about that. And you're also right about the fact that climate tends to change incrementally,
Anyway,
and
yeah,
that most Americans and probably people everywhere in the world are concerned with very imminent kitchen table issues,
yeah,
issues that pertain to survival,
yes,
putting food on the table,
yes,
affording groceries,
yeah,
affording health care, child care, and so forth, paying the mortgage if they own a home. All of these things tend to take precedence. And then we have a myriad of distractions from the media. On top of all of that, there are political forces that are taking this critical issue and politicizing it
yes,
and turning it into a tribal issue,
yes,
whereas it's an issue of human
yes,
survival, and the climate crisis is truly an existential crisis.
no
So
question.
we have to get together. We have to understand that these issues are scientific and technological. They're
Yeah,
not political issues.
yeah,
And so we need to avoid trying to fragment the electorate for personal gain and thereby stymieing
yes,
efforts to try and combat climate change.
yeah,
We have to do this. And in my book, Solving the Climate Crisis, I talk about the technological, ecological, and social, political, economic, cultural um, methods
yeah,
that have to be used in these three primary
right,
domains that
right,
I alluded to:
absolutely,
technology, ecology, and sociology.
right. Well, during the past few years, at least, we have broken the record, certainly in the summer, of being the hottest day on record, the hottest year on record. No matter where you live, some parts of the globe experiencing heat they've never experienced before. I guess some people think that's cyclical, and others find that to be a problem that is due to our climate problem.
It is obviously a climate problem.
Right.
The temperature, the what should I say? The average global surface temperature last year
Mm-hmm.
was the hottest in 125,000 years.
Yeah.
That's not accidental. That is due to the burning of fossil fuels
Yeah.
and the contamination, basically,
Yeah.
of the atmosphere. And we have now got the highest level of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere in something like 4 million years. These are extraordinary numbers, and they have implications. The trouble is that, as you said, some people like to attribute things that they observe to long-term or dominant trends, not
Yeah.
recognizing that anecdote is different from data, and that when scientists, specifically climate scientists who've spent years studying geophysics and climatology and got their PhDs and have done research in the field and looked at thousands of studies by other people that have been summarized by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is the result of careful analysis, thoughtful analysis. It's not something that you can dismiss because the weather yesterday or last week in your neighborhood was hot or cold. It's
Yeah.
irrelevant. So that's another problem. The American public, honestly, needs to be better educated on scientific issues and be able to understand the difference between data an anecdote,
Right.
the difference between weather and climate, which is long-range weather.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything else. When you're playing a team sport, if you're all on the same team and you're all in the same frame of mind, you can win. If you're divided and are not in the same frame of mind, you will lose every game.
That's such an excellent point.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree, Ron.
Yeah. Well, your book actually takes a look at where we are with that and how we can move forward, and how if we don't do anything, we can not move forward. Certainly,
We can destroy civilization if we don't move forward.
Right.
But I show in the book that we could actually solve this ever worsening crisis profitably, and thereby unlock actually trillions of dollars in savings and create millions of new
right.
good paying jobs.
Absolutely.
And then save millions of lives and species
Yeah.
while we protect public health and the environment and our democracy. So all of this is good news, but we need to coalesce as a people, and in an environmental and climate movement, we need a mass mobilization in the United States and elsewhere in the world. We have to recognize that we literally are in a climate emergency because of some of the factors that we've already discussed. And we can't just kick the can down the road. We tried that, as I mentioned. Climate diplomacy began over 30 years ago in 1992, and since then we have more than tripled the number of motor vehicles and quadrupled the number of airline trips, and we have tripled the production of plastics and all kinds of trends that make it harder and harder to solve this problem. So we need a mass mobilization, and we need to become unified as a nation to address this, so that we become a beacon of light, if you will, or a model for the rest of the world, instead of being a problem and exporting fossil fuels. We are today in the United States the world's largest producer of oil, the largest producer of coal, the largest consumer of coal and oil, the third largest producer of coal. I meant to say largest producer of natural gas, largest producer of oil, third largest producer of coal. And then we talk a good game, and we can reduce our emissions. And in fact, our emissions fell by 4% last year. But the trend is not our friend when it comes to climate change, and we need to make some dramatic moves here. We need a sea change in policy so that we get all of our energy cleanly from renewable and sustainable forms of energy that are fuel-free and that don't require us to be burning fossil fuel every day. Like the climate activist Bill McKibben said, it's like setting money on fire. We're burning fossil fuels, and we have to keep burning them. And the more we buy, the more we burn, the more money the fossil fuel industry makes. So naturally, they don't want to facilitate this clean transition. They're standing in the doorway and spending hundreds of millions of dollars on misinformation in order to continue our addiction to fossil fuel.
I liken this to cigarettes, where we knew that this was going to be a problem, but the market and the demand and the money was too strong to stop. And then finally, it reached a point where entire generations were dying accordingly. And then we did something about it. Far too late for many, 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 many people who grew up with that addiction. It's the same thing. We know, but we got to play the game because that's where the money is. I think it's very, very. It's kind of sad, but I think that's reality.
I think that the fossil fuel industry in this country and elsewhere in the world has a tremendous amount of political and economic power. They made $4 trillion last year, and they use that power politically to influence and to obstruct the kind of legislation
That's
that
correct.
would actually enable us to frontally deal with climate change.
Exactly.
And it's ironic in a way that because their product is so expensive and the U.S. Spends over $500 billion a year for oil and nearly 400 for natural gas and $50 billion on coal. When you add it all up, it's slightly over $1 trillion out of pocket on coal, oil, and gas. If we were to convert our economy to rely on clean electricity, which is a lot more efficient than combustion technologies, we can reduce the total amount of energy that we consume, and we can also use the money not spent on fossil fuels to fund the transition to solar power, wind power, geothermal power, hydropower, and energy storage. We have to, however, educate people that this is going to be profitable, that this is going to be stimulative to the economy, that it will create jobs, and that it will make the United States
That's right.
much more competitive globally when we sell our products abroad, because they will require less energy
Yes.
and therefore be cheaper to produce. So I think this country, I had written in my book that we need a national climate action plan, but I think we ought to call it a national prosperity plan, because this will generate prosperity. And we could also seize upon it and use it as an opportunity to rectify some of the injustices that have grown up around the fossil fuel industry, where you have Cancer Alley in Louisiana, where chemical companies and, I should say, petrochemical companies have concentrated, and the pollution from these facilities is largely felt by poor communities, by low income communities.
Right.
That
They are the most affected. Yes.
Yeah, which is actually a trend all around the world.
Correct.
In terms of nations. The developing nations with their emerging markets are hit hardest by the impacts of fossil fuel pollution that they have done the least to actually cause.
Yeah.
It's the industrial countries that have used up their space in the atmosphere, and now we need to extend a helping hand generously to those countries, and thereby help them to kind of leapfrog the fossil fuel age and move directly to fuel-free, sustainable, clean energy.
Well,
if we don't do that, by the way, Ron,
then we're screwed.
then we are going to we have a global atmosphere, and so everybody has to either pull their own weight or get a helping hand. Otherwise, the problem is not going to be solved.
Well, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, because the human race, always in the mode of power and profit, need to understand and believe and act accordingly, that with the new technology of clean energy, you can make even more money. You can lead the frontier. You can lead other nations in that way. You can be the leader in the frontier and make even more money than you thought. That's what we have to, because that's the only thing they understand. And it's the companies that need to take this. Yeah, political problems up the ass, yes. But it's the industry that needs to say, we're doing this because we see the future, and that's where the money is.
Did you say the industry, meaning the fossil fuel industry, or American industry as a whole, the business community?
American industry as a whole, because when they demand it, they're going to get it.
I agree with you. That is certainly true. And one thing that could make this attractive to big business is that right now the whole world is providing $7 trillion a year in subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, according to the International Monetary Fund. And in the United States, it amounts to $646 billion in implicit and explicit subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. This is a mature industry. It's a lucrative industry. It's an industry that had no compunction about taking advantage of supply chain interruptions and jacking up prices. What are we doing? Subsidizing the risks and damages that we don't want by sponsoring and coddling a wealthy, mature industry. We need to pass a carbon fee and dividend measure nationwide so that we internalize into the market the costs that the fossil fuel industry has been getting a free ride on and sort of externalizing and inflicting upon society.
We're enabling it.
So,
we enable.
Yeah. So we eliminate subsidies and we price in these hidden costs. And then firms and households would automatically have to consider climate disaster and catastrophic risk because it would be priced in. And we could subsidize low and middle income people by rebating the proceeds of a carbon tax. It makes total sense, and it would speed the transition to a clean energy society, which is what we have to keep in view as the goal here.
Well, if you have kids or grandchildren, take a look at them and then think about what Dr. Berger just said. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. The book is Solving the Climate Crisis, Frontline Reports from the Race to Save the Earth. What title could be more on the line? It's available everywhere, I assume, at this point?
It is available everywhere, and people can also go to solvingtheclimatecrisis.us. I'm not selling the book. I have a publisher, and the publisher sells it, but you'll find ways in which you can order it. And I also encourage people to go to their local independent bookstore, which we need to support.
It's a matter of education, too, and it's also a matter of the American people speaking up and saying things. You have an election coming up. One of the candidates is trying to make some inroads. The other wants to keep it the same and make even more money off of this problem. So, you got a choice there, too. The American people, that's the way it's supposed to happen. Let's see what goes on there. Dr. Berger, thank you so much for your time. Your book does indeed raise the awareness, and that's unfortunately still step one. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Ron. I appreciate being on the show.
You take care, my friend. Well, that'll do it for me today. Thank you to my guest. Thank you to you. I'll be back again tomorrow with a brand new episode that would have to be, by comparison, more humorous and a bit more entertaining. Let me just leave you with this. The Earth will always be here. Problem is, for humans, eventually it'll be inhabitable. And that's the problem. Until next time, I wish you peace.